Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Change I Am Possible podcast. Do kindly subscribe, support, and share. So, today I bring to you Akshay Singhal. He's the founder of Log9 Materials, a Bangalore based nanotechnology startup that's using graphene to power and revolutionize the future of mobility with aluminum fuel cells. They say that it can power an electric vehicle for 1,000 kilometers with zero waste and zero emission, basically a circular way of generating electricity. Besides that, they've also built a product called Corona Oven, which is a disinfectant chamber that kills coronaviruses and other pathogens. So I wish you enjoyed this conversation. So, Akshay, tell me, nanotechnology is one of the most disruptive and transformative technology, right? Because it proposes to engineer or re-engineer the source code of life, right? All that we see, all that we experience, the entire universe as we know is basically made of nothing but atoms, right? So, can you explain to my audience what nanotechnology is, its history, and what will happen when the technology matures?
The term nanotechnology was kind of coined by Richard Feynman, who is a very renowned physicist, who was a very renowned physicist, I would say. And he said that there's so much room at the bottom. What he meant was that's a very famous lecture that he gave in US, which in which he mentioned there's too much room at the bottom. So what he meant was that there's so much scope and there's so much to be done at that nano level, at that atomic molecular level, and by doing that we can achieve so many great advances. If you look at all the semiconductor industry, all the other technologies which now transform our daily lives are based on nanotechnology. If nanotechnology was not there, nanofabrication was not possible, nano and microfabrication, so to speak. All your high capacity pen drives or hard disks and memory storage and all sort of advanced communication chips and platforms wouldn't have been possible. So it is not like it has a potential. It has definitely has tremendous potential, but it is already impacting our lives in ways we can't even imagine. There is a lot of use of nanotechnology which is happening in the space exploration and stuff like that. So all the cutting edge of technology is using nano in some form or the another. And if you look at let's talk about the current outbreak itself, for example. So any kind of diagnostic tools in today's world, whether it is for COVID-19 or beyond, uh, use various forms of nanotechnological processes and materials for diagnostic purposes, for interventions which are being used for developing drugs and stuff like that. So it is available everywhere. So what nano basically means is that any material which is in the range of 1 to 100 nanometers, or in some loose definitions it is goes up to 200 nanometers as well. Anything between that range, which is of that size, is a nanomaterial, and anything to do with and deal with these materials is nanotechnology per se. So when we talk about atoms and molecules, they're less than 1 nanometer. So we are talking about a small cluster of atoms and molecules, which we classify as nanomaterial. And in that case, any dimension, all or one of the dimensions, has to be in that range. So it is not like the whole object has to be in that range, but any one dimension of that I would say particle has to be in the nano range. That's what nanotechnology entails basically.
Right. So can you give my audience a reference or an indication how small? I mean, is nano when you said 100 nanometers? You know how?
Right.
Yeah.
I always so basically if I talk about my company Log9, so we work on graphene, which is one of the nanomaterials. And as I was saying, that one dimension has to be in nano. So if you look at graphene, so it is like a sheet. So the two dimensions, x y dimensions, are not necessarily in the nano range, but the thickness is in the nano range. So I always give this example that if you take like a sheet of tissue paper, for example. So if you imagine, so basically, if you take a full stack of tissue papers, you can imagine that to be graphite. So graphite has this layered structure where multiple sheets are arranged on top of one another. And if you take out one sheet out of that stack, that basically is graphene. Now, but the only difference is that you can visualize you can visualize the thickness of a tissue stack and then one tissue thickness as well. but that one tissue thickness itself will have millions and millions of graphene sheet. So that's the level we're talking about. If you take your hair strand, in your hair strand itself, there will be 1 million nanoparticles that can
Wow.
fit in the thickness of the hair strand. So that is the kind of scale we're talking about.
Lovely. So talking about graphene, I mean, excuse my very limited knowledge about graphene, but graphene is a byproduct of graphite, which is nothing but your pencil tip, right? I mean, your
Right.
right. So graphene. I mean, there was this huge hype around it. It's supposed to be that wonder material, and people said that it's going to take over the world, but nothing like that. It had happened. It's been vouched to be the strongest material. It promised us a whole lot of things, right from your ultralight airplanes, capturing carbon out of air, graphene based electronic wearable clothing, space elevator, and things like that. So where does the technology stand currently, and what are its potential? When people have been saying all of these things, what are the timelines of graphene being productive? Though at this point in time it says it's 100 times more stronger than steel and things like that. What is its current use cases, and what's going to be its future impact?
So basically, what has happened in the world beyond the smartphone era is that people have become immensely impatient.
Right.
So if you
Yeah.
if you see, graphene was discovered in 2004, and it was not until 2010 that actual like focused research on this material started. So what we are looking at is just 10 years of research happening on a completely new material. If you talk about any other material in the history of mankind, every material has taken 30, 40, 50 years to mature to its potential. If you talk about steel was discovered in the last decade of 1800s, right? And then it took another 30, 40 years before it could actually be used at such a mass scale. So at least 25, 30 years it took. So I'm not saying it will take 30 years. It will not take 20 more years. Already applications of graphene have started to come. But the thing is that research in such fundamental areas requires patience and time and patient capital as well. So all these things have to be kept in mind when we say that there was so much hype, and then there was so much kind of potential opportunity that was shown to us by talking about graphene. But where is the product? So they are coming up. I do appreciate that the hype was much more than the pace at which we have been able to deliver on the products, but they are coming up. And particularly if you look at the major advances that have happened with graphene are in the energy storage area. There are a lot of companies which are coming up with batteries which are enhanced with graphene, and not just new startups or new companies. Even traditional companies have been leveraging graphene for various high-end energy storage applications, including lithium-ion batteries, supercapacitors, and others. Then there is a lot of scope of graphene in the filtration space. Log9 Materials has itself launched two products in the filtration space, which are already in the market, and we are 5 times more efficient at the same price point than any competing product in the market, which is not graphene based. So from
Lovely.
that perspective, it is already starting to make an impact, but definitely it requires more time.
Right, completely
So
understand. So yes, I mean, when you said we have grown immensely impatient, I completely hear that, see that, and I agree, because I have been vested in the AR/VR space since early 2015, and then I realized that people are over expecting of these emergent technologies, which are
right,
also in a nascent stage. So all of these, right from artificial intelligence, IoT, nanotechnology, blockchain, AR/VR, MR, or autonomous vehicle, they are extremely in this nascent stage, and we need to be aware and careful of these technologies, because once they mature, all of these technologies are so potential that each of these could transform mankind, and not just transform, it could disrupt mankind if we do not make the right choices, right? So currently today we have been actually hit by COVID-19, a natural disaster. Exactly, we might get hit in the future with emerging technologies if we do not take the right choices right now, if we don't have the ethical, moral
Right.
conversation built in right now, because all of these technologies are so transformational. Like I said, it can disrupt mankind, right? So currently, everybody is talking about COVID-19. We are all confined to a house, but if you see, I mean, though this natural disaster has left it's going to have long-term disruption, but every dark cloud has a silver lining, right? So that this has been unprecedented times, and no time in history has the entire world come together, right from researchers, scientists, doctors, tech companies, all trying to build things to find solutions for COVID-19 or fight against Corona, right? So you have built something called an Oven,
Yeah.
Corona Oven that can disinfect virus. So can you share details on that, please?
Yeah, so basically, although this has nothing to do with nanotechnology per se,
Right.
but what has happened is that given our past experience of 5 years on developing various products, prototyping and fabrication and taking it to market. So from that perspective, we had all the infrastructure required for rapid prototyping and then putting together a lot of products and taking them to the fabrication level and then to the market level. We have once the outbreak happened and then lockdown happened in India, we started to explore that what contribution we can make to society in terms of fighting against COVID-19. And that's when we realized that every day we are bringing in a lot of groceries in our houses, and then we are washing them with soap water or with alcohol and stuff like that. And at the same time, if you look at hospitals, they are in dire shortage of masks and PPE and all of that kind of stuff. So how do we make sure that more masks are available to the hospitals? And the thing is that we need quality masks over there. So even AIMS said that to its doctors that you take your mask and sanitize it and try to sanitize and reuse it. But how do you sanitize it? You cannot just put a sanitizer on a mask because it will render it unusable. So that's when we figure out that UV light, if when designed in the right way with the right intensity and orientation, then it can sanitize any object. But the design feature and the has to be really great, so that every corner of the object is covered. At the same time, the intensity is above the threshold recommended by FDA. So that's what we designed. We have been able to pull together all our resources and design this product from idea to manufacturing in less than 15 days. So that's what has happened, and now we've been able to deploy this product across all police stations in Bangalore, and then it has gone to hospitals in Mumbai, in Delhi, in Bangalore, and other places. Apart from the direct customers which are buying it for their houses. So it has been a great success for Log9 because that quick time to market that we have been able to deliver on this product is phenomenal.
Lovely. Yeah, I think adversity has this weird thing. It creates opportunities, right? And
Exactly.
it also nudges people like you to create, build, innovate, and create these solutions. So yes, I mean, I was recently watching this video. There was this doctor who was showing how if he goes out to shop for essentials, he comes back and then he's got to transfer stuff from one bag to another, then he's got to sanitize it, and it's an extremely cumbersome process, right? So you saying you have a Corona oven, which whatever, whether it's groceries, whether it's personal protective equipments, all you need to do is you need to put it in that oven. And how long would it take to sanitize? I mean,
So
this,
within 10 minutes, any surface can be sanitized
right.
of COVID-19 or any other pathogen. So it's not just the COVID-19 virus, but any kind of bacteria or any other kind of mold or any other kind of virus or pathogen can be completely neutralized in this oven. And you just buy all the groceries and stuff, and then put it inside the chamber, and then you good to go.
Lovely. And what about the production? Because at this point in time, I mean, are you production? If you need to scale up, or how does that work? What are the partnerships? Do you have
So we
any
are already
partnerships?
we are using various contract manufacturers for this product, and we are at a stage of where we are able to produce 200 units per day, and now we are ramping it higher. So because the demand is much more, we are ramping up production as we speak.
Right. So UVC light also, I mean, I read that there's these negatives also. I mean, if you look straight into the eye, your cornea can get burnt. So
So basically,
how
for
safe is
human
it
safety,
basically?
yeah. So for human safety, what you ensured is that there is no leakage of UV light from the chamber.
Right.
So even if you try to open the chamber while it is working, it will get switched off.
Right.
So when you open the lid, it goes off, and then once, as long as the lid is closed, there is zero leakage of UVC light out of the chamber. So everything remains contained within the chamber itself.
Oh,
So we
lovely.
have used 4 layer of protective materials to build the chamber, which ensures that nothing gets out of the chamber. Some are reflective in nature, some are absorbent in nature, and with that we have built the box of high quality, so that there is no leakage of UV light outside the chamber.
Right. Yeah. So in the AR VR space, there's this company called Clean Box Technology. I think they built a similar product where you need to disinfect these AR VR headsets, and that's largely meant for your location-based virtual reality entertainment centers, where you have these large numbers of VR headsets, and so many people use it. So they have the box. It's the same principle. They're using UVC light, so you can disinfect the VR headsets. Nanotechnology, coming back to nanotechnology, so can you talk about your zero emission low cost aluminum air fuel cell graphene enhanced battery that you've built, and when will the product be market ready?
So aluminum fuel cell is something which has been particularly thought of from an India ecosystem perspective. Because if you look at lithium-ion batteries, that just doesn't cut it for India. A, we
Hmm.
don't have any raw material sources in the country, and B, that kind of temperature profiles and humidity profile that we have across the nation is not very suitable for that kind of technology. Also, we don't have the resources to set up that huge charging infrastructure which US and some countries in Europe have been able to do. If I talk about electric vehicles, and if only 30% of on the vehicles on the road have to become electric, the kind of charging infrastructure that is required requires us to invest equivalent to our defense budget every year on setting up charging infrastructure. And this
Right.
is not a one-time cost. This is every year you need to invest equivalent to your defense budget. And India is one of the largest defense spenders.
Hmm.
We're talking about that kind of huge capital required to set up a charging infrastructure across the country, which seems slightly unfeasible, at least to me. So there are very huge challenges with lithium ion when you talk about India. And if you look at, there's no battery manufacturing happening in the country, and everything is either in China or South Korea and all of those places. And now we have kind of missed the bus, because we start setting up the manufacturing today. We'll never be able to match the cost points where they will be, and the kind of technology advancement that they will keep on ramping up, because they've had a head start of more than 10 years now. So that's the kind of conundrum we are stuck in. Whereas if you talk about aluminum fuel cell, the best thing is that it provides you an electric vehicle which does not require charging. So it is an electric vehicle, but it can be refueled like a petrol or diesel vehicle. So that's the best part, because you don't need to set up charging infrastructure on the existing fuel stations, which are anyway immensely populated across the country. You can provide these aluminum plates, which are the fuel for aluminum fuel cell, and then you put it inside and you're good to go. Also, the range that is offered on the vehicle is more than 1,000 kilometers, unlike your EVs, which only give you 100, 200 kilometers. And that basically means that in even intercity travel on electric vehicle becomes possible.
Right. So it all sounds extremely positive, because you're saying the range like really more than doubles up because normally I think the range at this point for an EVs are close to somewhere around maximum 250 to 350, right? That's what people are
Yeah,
talking about. So
yeah.
you saying with your technology, it'll give you 1,000 kilometer range. You don't need to refuel. There's no charging required. So all that you need to do is add aluminum. Is that what you're
Right.
saying? And
Yes. So
what's
add
the price points? How does that work? So can you just run me through all that?
So the current estimates that we have, it costs running cost is similar to your petrol diesel vehicle.
Right.
So what you incur in India on a petrol vehicle or a diesel vehicle, ballpark in that range, your running cost will fall in. So it is not going to be additionally expensive for a consumer. So I'm saying running cost is similar to petrol diesel, but
Right.
if you look at a EV, there are two more considerations in the factor. One is that the upfront cost of the electric vehicle is very high. If you
Right.
take any electric vehicle and you compare it with a similar category petrol vehicle, it is at least 2.5 to 3 times more expensive.
Mm.
But in case of aluminum fuel cell, we'll be able to give it to you at 1.5 times.
Mm.
So you save a lot of cost upfront. And then the other thing which is always missed out of anybody's consideration in electric vehicle is that every 3 to 4 years you have to change your battery
Battery.
in the EV, which constitutes 40% of the whole vehicle cost. If you have to basically change, like if you to invest 40% of your vehicle every 3-4 years, that's a huge cost. So when you factor all of that together, your cost will be similar to petrol, diesel, but lower than that, and it falls even lower than electric vehicle.
Right.
So to factor all of that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it sounds interesting, but I'm sure there's so many others who are working on different battery technology. But so tell me, are you at this point in time talking to partners, talking to people where you can grow the ecosystem and like collaborate? Like for example, are you talking to OEMs? Are you talking to people who are building EVs?
Yeah, so we are working with OEMs. We have already completed our feasibility analysis on the technology platform, and now the idea was to, by the end of this year, get into prototyping of actual vehicle. But before the vehicle happens, we are getting into using aluminum fuel cells for stationary power generation,
Okay.
like a replacement for your diesel generators. That is the first port of call that we are doing, and the idea is to launch this on the telecom industry. And then it will also go into your home, especially in Mumbai and Delhi, where installation of new diesel generators has been already banned.
Right.
So for power backup, what do you do? Because if you need long-term backup, then you can't depend on inverters because they can only give you for a few hours, give you power backup for a few hours. So from that perspective, that's the first thing we will be taking to market. And if COVID was not in place, then we would have already started prototyping it with our OEM. Piloting it with our OEM. But another 2-3 months, we'll start that pilot, and then it will go into actual pilots on a telecom tower, and then we'll start manufacturing in the next year. So that's the roadmap we have. But as far as the vehicle is concerned, the electric vehicle prototyping or piloting with the OEM will start early next year.
Lovely. So it sounds extremely exciting. So wish you guys the very best for it. So besides the clean energy, I read on the website that this will be zero emission, right? So could you share a little bit more light on that?
Yeah, so it's so as I said, it's a refuelable electric vehicle. So there is no emissions in this technology. The way the technology works is that you have aluminium, and then it gets oxidized inside our system, and that generates energy. So if you look at aluminium smelting or aluminium industry per se, what happens is when you get aluminium from the earth, it is in the oxidized form. So it is aluminium oxide that you get out of the earth, and then you convert that into aluminium, right? So when you are doing oxide to aluminium, right? So you're putting in energy. It requires electricity to produce that. And what you're doing is when we take aluminium as a fuel, you put it in our system and it gets oxidized again. So that releases energy. So we're capturing that energy back in the form of electricity, which can power up the vehicle. So that's how it happens. So there is storage of energy in the chemical nature of aluminium, and then withdrawing that energy from aluminium. So that's the way the entire system
Circular.
works.
Right.
It's a circular system.
Right.
So again, it gets aluminum oxide gets created, and then that aluminum oxide is sent back to the smelter again, which can again convert it into aluminum. It's a completely circular, zero waste generation, zero emission system.
Lovely, super, interesting. So besides the clean energy space, you're also into the filtration space within nanotechnology, right? With the sorbine product. So can you just little talk about that?
Yeah, so basically, if we talk about sorbine, that's the one I gave you an example of. So it uses graphene to absorb oil from spills or any other chemical wherever it is spilled, whether it is in water or whether it is on land. And if you look at sorbine, so this our sorbine pads are 5 times more efficient than the competing pads in the market. Whether you take 3M, Newpig, and there are other companies, and these are like huge billion-dollar ventures which have these pads for spill containment. And if you compare our product with that, it is 5 times more efficient in absorbing oil. So if so the way it works is that our pad can absorb 80 times its own weight in oil. And if it is in water, then it will not absorb even a single drop of water, and only oil will be picked up. So you can clean up any oil spill which is happening in the oceans and save the marine life. At the same time, there are a lot of spills happen in the industry as well. So you can absorb that, clean up the space, and maintain a hygienic working environment. So that's the product sorbine that we have been manufacturing for some time now.
Right, lovely. I mean, I forgot to ask you the question. What's the price points for the Corona oven? I mean, if it's commercially it's available, what's the price point at this point in time? Somebody wants
So
to
Corona
acquire it.
oven,
Where do you need
the
to
one
go
that
go and get it? And what's the price point?
So you can go to our website, www.corona.oven.com.
Mm.
That's the website. You can directly order from there. There are two variants, 33-liter capacity and 20-liter capacity. Right now, the one that is available is 33-liter capacity, which is at a price point of 12,999.
Right. So, what would you tell, advise startups who are getting into nanotechnology at this point in time? Where should they go? What should they do? What are the do's and must do's, and what they should avoid?
So basically, for startups, they should focus on figuring out their niche, their core expertise in nanotechnology. Because nanotechnology, as we're discussing, can be applied into various different areas. They need to figure out what particular sector or area is particularly suited for them, the kind of expertise they have, the kind of experience the founders have, and then focus on that, because every aspect cannot be taken up. For example, we also explored some stuff on the electronic side, and then we said that no, this is not possible for a startup like us, because the kind of capital required for this is huge. So for example, if you want to do something on the microchip side or stuff like that, then you need to invest hundreds of millions of dollars to start with, which is not possible for a startup. So from that perspective, you need to figure out that what areas of nanotechnology, what application of nanotechnology is something which is feasible in your scope, especially for the startups.
Right, right. So last question. You know, it's a little deep. It's philosophical. So everything that we know of, like I said, we started with, is made out of atoms, right? Your coal, diamonds, sand, trees, us humans, the entire universe. It's just an rearrangement of clumps of atoms. You know. So, do you believe what double slit experiment posits? You know that atoms do not exist. It comes into existence only on a conscious observer, right? So, what do you think will be the implications when we have a working quantum computer, a quantum computer that instead of or like a normal classical computer which works on binary code, works on qubits, the source code of life, right? And that's atoms. So, will that be the tool of the gods? So how excited are you of that future, or do you, I mean, you don't even get into something like that?
No, I think those kind of advancements are the next step of technological progress, because unless and until you have that, we are kind of reaching a limit on what we can do from physical structures. So what you can do from a physical processor, the kind of process that we have today, there is a limit to that. Even you're already at a nanotechnology level. Now you have to, like you said, get to the atomic level. That's the only step left. So if you have to make progress, and then you have to really explore the universe and go about as Musk hopes, colonize Mars and stuff like that. So for that, all that kind of stuff to happen, it is very important to get to quantum computing and those kind of technological advancements.
Lovely, lovely. So, Akshay, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you and getting to know about what you're building. So, what comes next for you? What comes next for Log9? And what's your future vision or moonshot?
So the moonshot definitely is aluminium fuel cell. There's no doubt about it. We want to completely base the EV dream of India on the aluminium fuel cell, because if you look at it, India is one of the largest producers of aluminium in the world, and from every which perspective, from the temperature, humidity profile, availability of raw materials, it makes tremendous sense for India. So that's definitely our moonshot. And then what we want to do is make aluminium fuel cell, or India, a hub of aluminium fuel cell, wherein it originates, serves the country, and then gets exported to the entire world. So that's our moonshot. And immediately next steps is definitely to get into telecom industry with aluminium fuel cell, and then the electric vehicles in the next year. So that's what we are working upon. And right now, if I talk about very short term, next 4, 5, 6 months, Then we are also trying to develop various variants of Corona Oven, which can be used to kind of sanitize and protect different use cases. So, for example, sanitizing an entire hospital room, or buses, or restaurants and stuff like that. So that is what we are looking at.
Lovely. Akshay, thank you for joining Change and Impossible podcast. And I believe that we need more innovators like you building together, because I was watching Unseen Horowitz and Bill Gates, and they said the only way to come out of this very dark and trying times is to build. We need to build, we need to innovate, and the future looks bright, right? I mean, we are at the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. Things have never looked better for human history, though there is this little roadblock which has come in the face of COVID-19. But like I said earlier, never in the history of human time have we all come together and are solving this problem. And we see, I mean, I'm using the word opportunity. I shouldn't be using the word opportunity, but yes, I mean, we are using this opportunity to help each other and move ahead as a collective rather than individual. So thank you. Wish you the very best for the aluminium fuel cell, and I wish that revolutionizes or the future of mobility. But because at this point in time, or ICE vehicles have messed up the environment, and it's creating such a terrible future for us or kids. My kid has a breathing problem, and in some ways, this I think it's not just my kid; it's people around, the kids and elders around the world who are suffering. So yes, we need a clean energy revolution. So wish you the very best for it, and thank you for joining Change and Possible podcast. And for the listeners, if you like what you see in here, please press the subscribe button. Like always, I'm going to leave behind the details behind of Akshay Singhal, so you guys can get in touch, because this is about building a community and growing the ecosystem. Thank you for joining us, and Akshay, thank you. Really pleasure to have you with us. Right?
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on the show.